what would your advice be to a younger man entering a relationship with a Latina woman?
Oh, yeah, we'll just start right off with that. Should I give a little background to your question? So
Please.
people who don't know me, I live in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I moved here 2010, and, I can't say that I went looking for a Latina woman. I'd had plenty of success dating and otherwise in the US, but I wanted to move to an area that had more sunshine where I grew up in Seattle, a lot like in the UK where you're at, gray, cloudy, short days, and I discovered Puerto Vallarta and fell in love with the sunshine, the beach. I was just on the beach an hour ago for getting on the call with you, and, just the culture, the music, the people, and yeah, the Latina girls were pretty cute, but again, I don't know that I went looking for one, and people I am married to a Latina woman. She's from Guadalajara, Mexico. I met her here in Puerto Vallarta. People ask how we met, and it's such a love story. I was walking down the street. I heard a voice say, "Hola, señor, want a massage?" And I said, "No hoy, tal vez mañana." Not today, maybe tomorrow. And I just kept walking. I had my backpack. I was on my way to a Starbucks to do some work. I thought, I liked her voice. I didn't even look at her. I didn't even know what she looked like, but I liked her voice. So I turned around, walked back, said, "How much? Cuánto?" And we will have been married coming up on 9 years this November. So I didn't see that coming. I didn't go looking for it. And I think my wife is as crazy as they come and as amazing as they come. And, so far, I've been able to handle her version of crazy. Um, but yeah, I think she's just fucking amazing, and guess what? I got to learn Spanish in my, 50s and 60s, which I was already kinda trying a little bit, working on it. I'd had it in school. I took a class or 2, but yeah, you start a relationship with somebody who doesn't speak your language, and I thought, why not? I wanted to learn Spanish, so let's go. So, I back to your question. What is the specific question now that I've laid the groundwork of who am I to answer it?
Well, even then, she reached out to you, so she initiated that contact with
She
you,
did indeed. She did
which in
indeed.
itself is unique, right? In
Yeah,
even the world we live in, and
well, it's not so unique necessarily here in this culture, especially I live in a tourist town. Puerto Vallarta is a tourist town. So walking down the street is not unusual to hear somebody say, hey, honeymooners, hey, friend, selling timeshares, massage. When my wife and I were walking to a restaurant on the beach today, some guy said, "Hey, friend, weed," and so yeah, usually when they say, "Hey, pipes, weed, cocaine," I look and say, "Your sister?" But, that doesn't always go over well, but my wife laughs at it, so, it's a good joke. So, yeah, so they're always selling you something. So it's not that unusual for somebody to say, for example, "Hola, señor, want a massage?" She was standing out front of her massage place. She's told me this story multiple times, with her coworker, a gay guy, and she says what happened is they both saw me walking up the street. My wife says the way she tells it is she says, "The hand of God turned her head and said, 'Look.'" And she goes, "I've watched thousands of people, men, women, all ages, walk up down the street, but never did I look at somebody and just go, 'Wow.'" And she said her gay companion looked at her and said, "Do you see that?" And she goes, "He's mine." And her gay companion said, "We'll see." And so, she won the bet. And gay Puerto Vallarta is also a very gay-friendly town. So, it would not have been a surprise whichever way that one went, I guess. So, yeah, she did initiate that, and quite honestly, I mean, it's not that I'm slow or shy, but she later on, basically initiated sex with me. She kinda walked in her room with a condom and said, "Está bien?" Go, "Por qué no? Why not?" So, she was very assertive. She knew what she wanted, and she's still very assertive and knows what she wants, and, uh, her one of her personal life mantras is, "Si yo quiero, yo puedo." If I want to, I can. I tell you, I love that mantra, "Si yo quiero, yo puedo."
Mm.
And I tell her she's my role model for facing fear and leaning into stuff that scares me. Because this woman grew up in poverty, Guadalajara, Mexico, 8 out of 10 kids. Father left the family when she was 5, just abandoned them, poor, poverty. She's been beat on and, you know, by family, by neighbors, been abused, priests, everybody. That woman's been through more shit than anybody should ever have to go through, which is not unusual for Latina women to just endure a lot. And a lot of them come out stronger for it. And my wife is still the most generous, open-hearted person. I mean, she's got her wounds, but just last night, today is Independence Day in Mexico. Viva Mexico, cabrones is kind of the phrase. Um, and so last night she made a giant pot of pozole. We probably had 25 people in the house last night. She's always the life of the party. Everybody loves her. But yeah, she's just that strong, vibrant, just brilliant woman. In many ways, I wish my Spanish was better. We speak all in Spanish with each other, but she's so fucking funny. She just cracks people up right and left. And because I don't get a lot of the double meaning of the words of the jokes, I just wish I understood her humor even better. Even so, I still think she's funny as hell. So I just, this amazing woman found me, and it's kind of like, who am I to say no when something amazing, walks through the door? So I said yes when she walked in with the condor. I said yes when she said, "Hola, Sonora, want a massage?" And and here I am, probably 11 years after we met, coming on 9 years of marriage, and just so grateful that I said yes.
I have an interesting experiment that I did on before I met my girlfriend. So the actual way in which I met my girlfriend was I was in Spain, and someone had given me the advice to get on a dating app. That a great way to start to learn a new city was to go on dates, to have fun, and just start to see some places and new spots. Thought great idea. Turned on the dating apps, but my instantly was sort of filled with dread as to the experience is not amazing. But I had listened to you before, and you said something before which really hit me, which was about how to be seen as being attractive. But I actually, when I listened to it, I interpret it slightly differently as to almost how to find your own happiness, which the way in which you define trying to be attractive was through three things, which was to be comfortable in your own skin, to know where you're going, and have fun while you're doing it. So I thought, do you know what? If I was to aim at being happy, then three of those things sound pretty good. Like that, and in that order as well. And the first one being actually, I believe, the hardest one to kind of really understand who you are, be comfortable in that, to know where you're going, to have some form of direction, be ambitious. And for me, that was actually a little bit easier because I've kind of always been that as my personality type and from where I've been. And then having fun along the ways. I think sometimes we forget how to have fun when we're doing those things. But the experiment that I ran was when I opened up Hinge and I set up a profile. I put those three things, and I put it down on my profile saying, I'm comfortable in my own skin, I know where I'm going, and I'm going to have fun while I'm going there. And essentially underneath it said, who's with me? That
That blow up.
single thing got me the most responses I've ever had.
Yeah.
It was insane. It was always the women going, "Love it, love it, love it. I'm all in. I'm in for the ride." And it worked, charm. However, it didn't work with my girlfriend because she never saw me on the app. I actually went and found her else. I actually went on social media and actually messaged her on there and privately asked her for a coffee. But it was so amazing that when I heard that information, one, I have to thank you for actually putting that into my world because it actually changed the way I presented myself for myself. And then actually in terms of from a dating world, it worked, but it was while it didn't bring me dates because I wasn't trying to actually engage with them in the end on that device, man, it was successful
Yeah.
in what it's given me.
I love that as well because I spent the first 40 something years of my life not thinking I was attractive to women, not thinking women are interested in me, maybe especially attractive women. Um, I was married for the first 25 years of my adult life, and by the time I got divorced in my late 40s, I got out there in the world, and women were coming on to me, they were flirting with me, propositioning me. Like I said, my wife propositioned me. She led the way. They were getting naked on first and second dates, and I was going, "What planet have I landed on?" Now, it wasn't because I was young and buff and rich. It wasn't, what do they say in the black pill that you have to have status, looks, and money? Is that kind of the 3 things you have to have?
Probably the trifecta, yeah.
Yeah, to get the high quality women, and then they go, "Well, I don't have those, so it's women's fault, I can't get," whatever. And, I didn't have those. I didn't have the status, looks, or money. My what hair I had was going away, it was gray, I don't think I was in the best shape when I got divorced, went through bankruptcy after that, so it wasn't like I had any of those things, and I was still getting laid without trying. I wasn't even chasing anybody, they were coming to me. So I couldn't believe what planet I'd landed on. And so, that's like 20 years ago, and I'm 69, I'll be 70 at the end of the year, and, my jealous Latina wife still, almost daily, points out women that are coming just in the gym yesterday. "I can't believe my friend kept walking in front of you and bending over and putting her ass in your face while you were on that machine." You know, she still is pointing out women, typically much younger than me, women in their 20s. Younger, who are flirting, trying to get my attention. And again, it's not because I'm young and buff and loaded, but all I can really attribute it to is those 3 things. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I did a shitload of therapy. I've been working on releasing shame for 35 years in various different scenarios, being with safe people, sharing the things about me that I have shame about that I don't want people to know about me, revealing to where I am comfortable in my own skin. I like me. I like who I am. I'm happy being me. And in terms of knowing where I'm going, you know, guys will ask me all the time, Robert, you're lucky. You live in a great part of the world. You're married to an amazing woman who's 22 years younger than you. You're making a difference in the world. I often say no luck involved. I worked my ass off to get a PhD by 29 years old. I worked my ass off to write a book that's changed the world. I worked my ass off to move to Mexico. It took me 10 years to make that transition to get here, to learn Spanish in my 60s. You got to put work into it. And I'm really okay with that, but, not one day of my life have I gotten up and thought to myself, "What's my purpose?" I just get up and either do what excites me, what calls me, what perplexes me, what I struggle. If I'm struggling with something, I'm actually kinda struggling right now as we speak. I was talking to one of my best friends about it this morning. Like I said, I'm about to turn 70, my mother's 90, she's not gonna live a lot longer. I'm looking at, this transition of, I know I'm gonna be gone in 20, 25 years or sooner, right? So I'm dealing with a transition phase of life. I still love my work. I want to do my work. I also want some more kind of downtime, more time to connect with people I love. And so I'm actually in a phase of not knowing what's next, right? And I was telling my friend, there's that part of me that wants to try to figure out what's next, but really what I'm just doing is just taking today. What's here today? What's required of me today? And I get up today and do what's here today and live my best life today, knowing that tomorrow will inform me tomorrow what's required of me tomorrow. So I'm not trying to think of what am I supposed to do for the next 20 years. I'm just thinking, what am I supposed to do today? And I just get up and do today with all my passion and all my energy. And I'm having a good time. As I said, I moved to Mexico 'cause I just love it here. I'm, hanging out last night with 25 people that don't speak my first language, mostly Mexican, but half a dozen Cubans as well, which I can't understand the Cubans at all. My wife can't either. So just having a good time, eating pozole, making margaritas for the people, sneaking away to watch a few NFL football games, in my office, coming back. Just having a good time with it. Today, we went to the chiropractor. So my wife, let's go to the beach, get some D. So I had my toes in the sand today, eating a shrimp cocktail, looking at the blue skies, just living a good life. And so, for example, when I shared that kind of trifecta with Chris Williamson a year or two ago. He just loved it. And he'd blown it up. You can go online and watch an interview with him and Alex Hormozy, where he tells Alex Hormozy those three things, and Alex Hormozy just kind of riffs on all of them. And I've heard him share it with two or three other people. When I share it with especially female dating coaches, like on interviews, and I say, the feminine's highly attracted to a man who's comfortable in his own skin, knows where he's going, looks like he's having a good time getting there. The women coaches all go, "Ah, yes." Yeah, they don't have to think about it. They go, "Yeah." The women aren't going, "Well, but does he have status? Does he have looks? Does he have money?" They're not thinking that. They're thinking, "He's comfortable in his own skin? Oh, how rare is that? He knows where he's going, not just a workaholic, but he's actually making a difference in the world, and he's having a good time doing it." Yeah, they wanna jump on that train. They wanna climb on board and travel along with you and have a good time. So, I don't go out. I haven't chased women since my 2nd wife. I chased her for 14 years trying to get her to show up. But I haven't chased a woman since then. The feminine comes to me, and the feminine, is all things. It's women, it's babies, it's dogs, it's cats, it's money, it's opportunity, it's adventure. And I think when you are comfortable in your own skin, know where you're going, having a good time, everything is an adventure. Even me about to turn 70 and not knowing what the next 20 years are gonna look like, I'm excited. It's gonna be an adventure. 'Cause I look back on what's happened in my life over the last 20 years, I'm going, "A lot's happened over my life in the last 20 years. The next 20 years is even half as interesting and excited." I'm looking forward to that one. So again, I think the feminine, I can't say all women are naturally is gonna be turned on by every guy, just like we're not turned on by every woman. But I think if you don't care if they like you or not, if you're not trying to impress them, if you're not trying to prove you're a high value man with your status, looks, and money, or that you do cold plunges every morning and go to the gym, 2 hours every day, you know, a lot of times they don't care. They don't give a fuck. But you comfortable in your own skin, they wanna get close to that. So I'm glad that worked for you, and I'm glad Chris has been spreading that around because it seems to resonate, and it breaks it down. So many young men nowadays think, "Well, if I don't go to the gym regularly, if I don't have big biceps, if I don't have six-pack abs, if I if Mike Lickfunnel isn't, making me 100,000 a month, if how can I get the high quality women?" And I go, "Just fucking look around. If you're comfortable in your own skin, they're already checking you out." But, we've got our eyes focused, "Well, I want her. I want her." No, just look around. They're all out there. They're noticing. They're noticing.
Yeah, for me, I think people have got it backwards. I think they look at the last two. Where am I going? Am I having fun going there? Sometimes they might go fun, and it actually goes to some sort of like maladaptive behavior. But actually, if you're m- people will probably go, I need to know where I'm going. I need to be doing something in order to be someone, and then they'll like me. And I think j- there have been things that I have probably done as a younger guy that have definitely been driven in that direction where I thought I need to do more and then I'll
We
be
all we
more.
all do that as younger guys. That's what being young means.
100%. But it actually gets you somewhere. There's a real value in that to it
Yeah.
gets you going, right? And then for me, those those three things, they actually really catalyzed. I've been in therapy last 2 years. I started 2 years ago, and it was a big thing for me in terms of breaking out of a lot of the cycle that I'd been in before. And I'm a deep thinker, but I wasn't an emotionally expressive person in terms of being able to talk about it. In sport, you're very much you're put in a very macho environment where you're told to like just squash that down and just deal with what's in front of you. It's not explicit, it's definitely implicit in terms of how it's
But now
delivered.
you're going to get an advanced degree in sports psychology, and you're right. Teams of all sports are realizing, hey, if we don't deal with what's between people's ears, they're not going to perform at their best. So you're right. Whether it's just an average Joe or a professional athlete, we got to deal with what's between the ears if we're going to enjoy life and have that kind of energy that welcomes success and welcomes the feminine being attracted to us. So, I and what's really cool, I don't know how old you are, but I love that your generation, whether it's millennials, Generation Z, are really very open to therapy. open to coaching. I think maybe every Gen Z person is a coach, if you go on the internet or, especially on Instagram. They're all co like, I heard somebody say not too long ago, "Oh, to have the enthusiasm of a 21-year-old life coach." Um,
Yeah.
us older folks just kind of smile at that. So, but I think that's really great that, because I didn't I mean, I had a PhD in marriage and family therapy at 29. I didn't ever actually get into therapy till my mid-30s, and, I just was so resistant. Why? I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I thought I had to get everything right, look perfect, already know it all, and got into therapy, and luckily I landed in some good places. In fact, first place I landed was in a 12-step group for sex addicts because my second wife told me I was a sex addict. Quickly found out I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict. But for the first time in my life, I started revealing myself, telling things to people that I'd never told anybody, that I'd never even looked at in myself. And you know what? Every week I look forward to going to that meeting like at 5 o'clock in the morning because it just felt so liberating to just go reveal things about me I'd kept really packed down inside. And then I got into therapy, a men's group taught by a psychologist, led by a psychologist who'd written books on sexual shame. And it just felt liberating to not have anything hidden, to have no secrets, to have I just saw an email come by yesterday from Aubrey Marcus talking about, just the to not have any secrets, to just put it out there. So I think it's great that your generation is open to therapy, open to having that kind of, "You know what? I'm just gonna, get comfortable being me." Because again, I think that's the path to happiness, and I think that, again, as we've talked about, it's a path to being really attractive to the world. And I don't just mean sexually attractive, I mean just really charismatic, energetically drawing things to you without you having to go chase anything.
The balance think I've struggled with is where I'm 35, so millennials I feel are a big generation that are going through that therapeutic space, and I think Gen Z have started to take it on and really run with it. However, I always attribute the fact that being a millennial, I kind of feel blessed because I'm in this space where I didn't grow up with a lot of the technological challenges that are being thrown at a young mind right now. And I also had a lot of the stoic, resilient behaviors that the older generation, especially here in Britain, sort of post-war mindset that we had coming out of there. I feel grateful to be sort of in that space in between where my childhood was running outside, being with friends and engaging with the world, right? And learning those characteristics that are great. But I have the once you've started therapy, it's kind of like you've opened a box that you'll never be able to shut. And I worry
Which is a
for
good thing, which is a
which is a
good
good
thing.
thing, right? But I worry with younger generations that when they start to lean on it, there's some other paths and avenues that taking it can remove the experience that they're having, that's right in front of them.
Yeah, and well, you can say more about what you're specifically referring to. My son's 40. So, he's just 5 years old. He just turned 40 last month. And, yeah, we didn't get broadband internet till he was like 12, 13 years old. And then we couldn't keep him and my stepson off the computer. They were looking at porn and stealing music on Napster, 24/7. We actually went to dial-up. Nobody your age probably remembers dial-up because
No, I
it
do I do use it.
it was so slow. I mean, trying to look at porn on dial-up, you watch it and go, watching a line come up one at a time, you go, "Oh, I think that's a boob. I think that's a boob. Oh, fuck, it's an elbow." So, yeah, in order to get them to but of course, they are of that generation, but then, of course, Generation Z comes along and, their parents are putting smartphones in their hands when they're 2 weeks old, and so they've just grown up and, they just live through the technology, and I honestly, I maybe I'm just an old fart. I don't love social media. I've never liked Facebook. People tried to get me on it, 25 years ago, and I never liked it. I don't love Instagram. YouTube I like. But TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, I'd say, who do you want to steal your data? Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, or the Chinese government? Take your pick. And I just think social media, I mean, it has such potential for good, and it does do good. But man, it has such potential not only for bad, but just for addicting people to technology because it's built. to addict people. Our smartphones, I stood in line and got a day one iPhone, when they came out, what, 16 or so years ago? And, the first phones did not have apps on them. And then when they introduced apps with the second operating system, it kind of like, well, what are those for? But it's the apps that actually addict you. So I think we've got this young generation addicted to their phones. That's how they connect. I've got a 20-year-old stepson and his girlfriend. She's on her phone 24/7. I never see her where she's not looking at her phone. She's just on her phone all the time. I don't know what she's looking at, Instagram, video games, whatever. So we've got that, and now with AI coming, I mean, I use AI. I just used it just for this call to try to find a phone number for the local Starbucks, where I think I left my water bottle this afternoon. And so I use AI, but I think AI is gonna lead to people not having to think anymore. For example, just a couple months ago, my wife was going from here in Puerto Vallarta, flying through Mexico City to go to Bogota, Colombia for a dance event, a salsa event. She's big into salsa and cumbia and bachata. And so the night before she's going, I get on Perplexity, an app on my phone for AI. And I ask about in Mexico City Airport, what terminal will she come into on Aeromexico, and what terminal will she have to get to her next flight, which was on a Colombia-based airline. And so it told me those 2. And then I asked it in English, and then so my wife's sitting at the table with me, so I relayed the information to her in Spanish. And because I hadn't turned off Perplexity, it then started repeating it with a perfect Mexican accent. The exact same information based on what it heard me say in English. It said it back to her in Spanish. And then I asked it something about the airport in Bogota, and it started speaking with a perfect Colombian Spanish accent. And I looked at my wife. I turned it off so it'd quit listening to me. And I looked at my wife and I said, if this had existed 10 years ago, I wouldn't have learned Spanish. 'Cause I wouldn't have had to. We could have just sat there with our phones in front of each other. In fact, my wife and I just had a couples therapy session in Austin, Texas last week with my coach there, and, I took her there. She'd never met my coach, and my coach speaks fair amount of Spanish. She's actually fairly fluent. I think she grew up in Miami, so, and but when it kinda got down to nitty-gritty in the therapy between my wife and and she didn't want me to have to keep translating, she just pulled out ChatGPT and spoke in English where I could hear it, and then played it back to my wife, and it was perfect. So, yeah, that's great, it's technology, but if it existed 10 years ago, I wouldn't have learned Spanish, and I'm glad I learned Spanish. So it makes me really think, how much of our cognitive reasoning, creative functions is this gonna rob us of? Now I see so many, like, newsletters and emails that they come out, and I go, "That was written by ChatGPT." I mean, you can tell. I mean, people aren't even writing their own newsletters anymore, and and for, a couple months, I kind of fell into that. "Oh, this is easy," and then I go, somebody gave me good advice, said, "Don't do it. Write your own stuff." And, I'm a writer, so I wanna write my own stuff. So kinda going back to, the younger generation, not only do they that's just their world, that's normal, that's just how the world works. And what I also see in the thing in terms of the therapy part of that, is that now kinda like everything's trauma, everything's related to trauma. Everybody's either a narcissist, a borderline, a sociopath, everybody's an amateur diagnostician, right? And while I think that approaching things from a point of view of trauma and its effect on us, I think especially in that younger generation, everything is put in the context of trauma. Kinda like everything about life is trauma. And I don't know that I wanna look at life is trauma. And so, and I think maybe that might come and go because a lot of things do. And so again, I'm really excited that younger generations are open to therapy but again, everything kinda is trauma and plant medicine and psychedelics these days, which is good. I mean, I I go to psychedelic therapy, I've done plant medicine, and I think there's value to it, but it's not necessarily the answer. So, I think the fact is, and I think this is where you come from with your show, is that life is a struggle. Scott Peck, who wrote a book called The Road Less Traveled, the best-selling self-help book of all time. Most young guys don't know about it. Amazing book. He begins that book basically ripping off the Buddha by saying life is difficult. said, "This is a great truth, one of the most important truths, because once we accept that life is difficult, life ceases to be difficult." Okay. So if we're living in trauma, oh, everything's trauma, everything's gonna be trauma. So what if we just accept, no, life's just difficult, you know? And is how we navigate the difficultness and embrace it and accept it and say, "Okay," like I said, I'm dealing with an emotional transition right now because of my age. I think it's a normal developmental transition for somebody my age. And, I kinda struggle at times, not knowing what's next and feeling kinda lethargic and feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And I'm just going, "Okay, bring it. Let's do it. This is what I'm supposed to be going through to get to the next phase so I can help the people who are coming behind me."
That mindset that you're talking about there, that approach, that's the thing that I I feel I don't see in a younger generation at the moment is because of the over-pathologizing of
That's a good way to put it.
whatever
Over-pathologizing, yeah.
whatever they've got going on in their lives. They'll read it online. So they're stuck in this sort of cycle of their devices bring them whatever algorithm
Push everything, just
is gonna
push
push
everything,
something
yeah.
that's sensationalized, but remember as well, it's going to be the most sensationalized, clickable piece of information that you possibly could find. So if they're thinking whether it's negatively or if they're interested in a topic, it will be a sensationalized version of whatever that topic is. So if it's like a loneliness, it'll be an incredible amount of loneliness that it might, or how bad that epidemic is, or whatever it might look like. And so you've got to, but in the mechanism of them looking at that device, they're not actually getting the social connection that they actually need to develop the skills that would allow them to get out of the issues that they're currently looking at. And so that for me is this horrible cycle that they end up getting in. So they're sitting there overthinking about what are overly negative issues and therefore don't have what you've just said is bring it on, come at me, let's take it on approach to life. And my view is if you use therapy at too young an age to open up that box to make them overthink and over pathologize it even further, then it almost paralyzes them from taking that step forward. Now, I know that's overgeneralizing a big thing there because there will
Well,
be people that will need therapy to take a
that's what
step.
we do on interviews, right? We overgeneralize stuff. We somebody's gotta, we gotta say something that people wanna pay attention to. And, and probably a couple things feed that. I think Chris Williamson talks about, how influencers and content creators it can become a caricature of their own selves because they go, "Oh, that went viral, that sells, that got a lot of likes," so they go more that direction, right? And then, of course, the algorithms of social media, you look at something and you're all of a sudden, you're gonna think that's all that exists, right? So you and then when you're in the echo chamber of your own head, I mean, we already have algorithms in our own head. They gather information to support the view of the world that we already are viewing the world as. It's called confirmation bias, and it's just part of our psychology. So here's my prediction. Now, I'm a terrible predictor. I don't know, do you have Costco in the UK? The big
The
box grocery
what the
stores.
we I think we have one or two.
Okay. Well, they're everywhere. I mean, there's a Costco 3 blocks from my house here in Puerto Vallarta. My mother lives like 2 miles from Costco headquarters in Seattle area. So, I joke, I'm a terrible prognosticator. I'm a bad guesser of what's coming because I always pick the wrong line at Costco. There are always long lines, and my wife and I go, "Which line?" And I go, "Don't ask me." My wife goes, "Don't ask me." We always pick the wrong line, okay? So I'm a terrible predictor of what's coming. But here's my thought. Like I said, the social media, the 24/7 feed push of especially the younger generations, AI, it's all seductive because it just clicks all the right buttons in our nervous system and the brain, with the dopamine and just the feel good and just feeling. Even me, I went camping for 3 weeks just last month up in the Seattle area. And I really made a point. I mean, I still use technology a little bit out there, still did a little bit of work, but I made a point of just putting my phone down and leaving it, not picking it up and looking at it for sports scores. Who gives a fuck, what the sports score is? So but even, as a guy my age that didn't grow up with the technology, I still, I have to make a rule for myself. Don't take the phone to the bathroom. Just go to the bathroom without a phone. You don't need a phone in the bathroom. But I have to make rules for myself because it's just so easy to just pick it up and look at it all the time. But here's my prediction. I think because most things swing, pendulum swings. I think right now we're probably not to the far extreme of where we're going yet in terms of the technology, what AI can do, how it actually disconnects us from real human interaction, from just being in the real world, from just playing in the dirt, walking in the, jungle, walking in the forest, you know, touching a real person, making love to a real life human being. It's taking us away from all that. And then I think at some point people can start waking up. And I think there'll be new content creators, new social media influencers that will start saying, get off social media, turn off your phone, you know, make me lose my job, start. I think groups will start popping up where people just start getting out and connecting in person, leaving their phones behind. Go in any restaurant, you see whole families, everybody's on their phone. Again, I don't think we're there yet, but I think it maybe is starting to creep in where people are starting to say, I'm gonna leave my phone in my pocket. I'm gonna leave it at home. I'm gonna leave it turned off. I'm gonna leave it on airplane mode." And I think at some point, I don't know when, again, I'm a terrible predictor. I think in the not too distant future, I think we gotta go down the AI rabbit hole further than we are to where all of a sudden people start going, "Wait a minute. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody has a job anymore because AI does everything." And I think, people will get out and start playing sports again, start just going out with friends without their technology, will find new challenges that challenge them without technology. So I think that's coming because I think, for 1.5 years, we've been tribal creatures out there hunting and gathering and just living for today. And so whatever we're experiencing now, it's just a tiny, tiny little pinprick in history. I think how we're wired is going to want to find expression, and that is connection, that is challenge, that is being outside, that's being with people, that's just welcoming, whatever those difficult. I think that's coming. So I'm actually optimistic about that. And, hopefully if I stick around another 25, 30 years, I think I'll see that transition.
So how do you think young men can, in that landscape right now, with everything that you know, and we can lean into nice guy syndrome as well down the line, but how do you think right now young men can navigate that landscape to authentically be themselves while being seen as attractive and a good person without probably being labeled as toxic or over assertive?
You know, there's a process to this that I think everybody has their own path and their own journey. My process was, number 1, I had to start getting honest with me. Who am I? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? Start being honest with the people around me, letting them see the real me. That took work. Um, I was in my second marriage when I started doing this work, and, I thought I was a good guy, I was an honest guy, I grew up fundamental Christian, but I came to realize I had a lie coach in my head that was constantly saying, "Tell it this way, leave that part out, misdirect, don't tell them that. Oh, make this story up, make it sound good." And, and that's really what had blown up early in my second marriage when my wife insisted, "You go get therapy." And, everybody thinks you're a nice guy, but you're not. Basically, she couldn't trust me, and for good reason. So, for example, one of the things I started doing is whenever I noticed a lie coach in my head, coaching me up on how to tell a story, I just would notice it. I'd go home. I'd tell her, "I was gonna lie to you. Here's a lie I was gonna tell you and why, and here's the whole truth." She never got upset. Yeah, she'd catch me lying all the time, and oftentimes she goes, "I know you're lying. This is the truth." Because she often guessed wrong at what the truth was, I could still keep the lie. "No, no, no, you're wrong about that." I thought, "How the fuck she know I'm lying?" She was just that intuitive, right? And I think women in general are. I think they will sense incongruence of any sort. So if you're not being fully you, fully present, fully visible, if you're hiding, if you're playing a game, if you're, you know, trying to impress somebody, They know something's wrong, they just don't know what, and it just feels creepy to them. And that's why nice guys often aren't very attractive to women. One woman wrote me, a few months back, and a pretty long email, and I didn't read it all, but the parts I read were really actually pretty intriguing. She said, "The nice guy's hiding of his sexual agenda and his use of covert contracts and trying to impress a woman and get her to like him while hiding the sexual agenda," which is usually what puts nice guys in the friend zone. She said, "That not only comes across as creepy, it comes across as predatory." And I'm going, "I could see that." A predatory person, like, if I'm walking down the street here in Puerto Vallarta and somebody's asking, they're acting like they're my best friend and they've got something really great to share with me. I'm going, we're not friends. You're either going to rob from me or you're trying to sell me something I don't really need, because I know they're not being genuine, right? Women know that. So being honest and being genuine. And again, I really stress in No More Mr. Nice Guy, find safe people to start revealing yourself. And again, I think a lot of generation is really open to that. That's why I think that is such a positive thing. Another really big piece for so many of the nice guys I work with, and I think it's even growing, is the disconnection most nice guys have from other men. Often we're more comfortable around women, getting their validation. A lot of and maybe even more so today than even when I started doing this work 30 years ago, a lot more men are isolated. They just don't connect with anybody, men or women. And again, there's so much just technology that they can just stay on technology 24/7. And so I think no, I don't think, I know we men have to connect with other men to be at our best self. Again, for a million and a half years, you and I were tribal brothers. We were going out hunting and gathering and hunting, gathering and warring and coming back and bringing the food, the furs and the fox back to the women and, providing, protecting. And we did it together. We did it as men. And really, it's only been maybe the last 60, 70 years that men quit having that deep connection with other men when they came back from World War II and women had been in the factories, building the bombs and the tanks and being in the hospitals and the nursing, men came back. And some women went back to being housemakers and other women stayed in the business world. And feminism came along, told women, your highest goal is to have a career. It's not being married. It's not having kids. And now all of a sudden, I'm not saying either that's right or wrong. It's just what is. Men don't have a place to go connect with men anymore. But I think that's changing too. Um, when I did my book tour for No More Mr. Nice Guy back 2003, traveled across the US, several major cities, a lot of interviews with newspaper and radio and television. And I was asked a lot if I saw a worldwide men's movement coming, like feminism. I said, no, I really didn't think so. I didn't think there was one unifying thing that would bring men together. But now I'm looking, and I really actually do believe there is a worldwide men's movement happening, but it's not what you'd think, and it's not necessarily immediately visible, but from where I sit, 'cause my life is men. It's all I do is work with men. And so I'm traveling to Australia in 2 weeks. I'm going to Denmark in November. I was in Japan back in April. I get to see men around the world. I was in Berlin a couple years ago, London a couple years ago. And so what I see is men not knowing that they're looking for tribe, not knowing that they're looking for a men's group, a men's program. But, they go out and they go find a dojo and they start grappling, doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They maybe join a stag 12-step group to work on, their alcohol or drug addiction. Maybe they go to a men's divorce support group at their church. Maybe they go to a pickup boot camp and they go out, with a bunch of buddies trying to pick up women. And they don't know they were going to find connection with men, but then they do. Maybe they make a buddy in the dojo. They get connected with the guys in their divorce support group at their church, their 12-step group, their pickup boot camp. They're connecting with guys, doing things with men, feeling empowered and engaged and seen and heard by other men. And now because there's so many podcasts out there, so many men's coaches, so many good books out there, that, one guy saying, have you heard of this book? No, tell me about it. Have you watched this podcast? No, it's really good. And now all of a sudden there's this kind of cross insemination of men's work. Hey, this guy just went looking, for a dojo. This guy just went looking for support from divorce. This guy just wanted to learn how to pick up women. But now all of a sudden they're connected with men. They're getting turned on to other programs and I really see this is blowing up worldwide of men finding depth of connection with other men. Even in the UK, someone turned me on to this a couple years ago. I may get the name wrong, but I think it's called Andy's Club, Andy's something club, where every Monday night, men all over the UK get together in a pub just to support each other. And it was started by the mother and best friend of a guy named Andy that committed suicide several years ago, and his mother and his best friend decided, "We gotta help men deal with this epidemic of loneliness and suicide." So this is the kind of thing that's popping up around the world. So, again, I'm optimistic that we're going in a good direction and that men are getting that depth of connection with other men. So, in terms of, where does a guy my age, a guy your age, a guy, 25, where do they go? I think number 1, find that safe place to start working on just being honest. You being accepted for you. When I was in that 12-step group and I would tell these really dark things I'd been thinking about that I never told anybody, the strongest reaction I ever got was, "Thank you for sharing, Robert." I go, "They don't think I'm bad." And so it let me let go of this must make me bad, right? So work at releasing that shame, being honest, and connecting with men, and especially men that are working at being vulnerable and opening up and being authentic. I think that is going to transform the world we live in. I really believe that.
I think we've obviously had the rise of the Manosphere and all sorts of labels that are placed on definitely the toxic end of that scale for people that are trying to show men the way, and I think they fall into that, you've gotta be more to you've gotta do more to be more sort of
Yeah,
category, but
and again, I'm not a fan. I'm all about, my men's membership program, Good Men Doing Better. I wear a little bracelet, just says "Do Better." I don't have to be better, I'm fine. But yeah, I'm happier when I do things better. I got into a shouting match with a shuttle driver from a hotel to the Dallas airport last Thursday morning at 6:30 in the morning. The guy was just a total dick. And I told him, I said, "You're an asshole." And he'd already called me cheap because I didn't give him a tip after he threw my baggage out on the ground. And I go, "No, I give tips for good service." And he goes, "Yeah, you're cheap, you're this, you're that." And I go, "Well, you're an asshole." Then he started saying abusive things to my wife in Spanish when he heard, her speak Spanish to me. And, I could have done better. That kind of ruminated with me for a couple days. I don't think I did anything terrible. I'm not a bad person. I could have done better. I could have managed that better. And, it gave me a chance to think about how could I have done better? Not to be a better person, right? Not to be more likable, not to be a higher value man that's going to attract higher value women, but just how could I have done better? And there's some ways I could have soothed myself, not engaged with him, not got, and I don't think I'm bad, no shame about it, but I can still do better. So I'm a big fan of how can we do better? But I don't think we have to be high value men to go get high value women. Again, I think if you like yourself, you're probably gonna be attractive to a lot of people. Now, of course, if you're just trying to get the youngest, hottest women you can get to validate some sense of worth that you don't think you have, or you somehow think those young, hot women are gonna be more interesting and better in bed, which is probably both a myth. Yeah, you better, get to the gym more often, do more cold plunges, do more CrossFit, do all that stuff so you can be the high value man. Um, but I understand the whole red pill thing. I understand incel. I understand MGTOW. I mean, I plenty of times thought about, I don't need women. Women make me crazy. I plenty of times thought about, I'll go my own way. Um, but I think what happens is that can initially be attracted to men who are looking for something, and they dive into it, and I found also often with that, they come out the other side of it, and they realize, that's too much, weaponizing, evolutionary psychology against women and saying they're all bad and they're all out to get us. Is too much of creating hierarchies between men. Well, I'm alpha, you're beta, I'm blue pill, you're red pill, you're an average frustrated chump, Captain Save-A-Ho simp. I think men might be drawn to some of the answers that are there, and then often come out the other side. I spoke at a red pill conference, it was right before COVID. And, I stood up and I said, "I don't identify as pickup. I don't identify as red pill, but I sure am glad to be standing in front of you guys talking to you." And I asked how many people had read my book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. Probably 3/4 of the 250 guys there raised their hand. And I said, "So I don't know if No More Mr. Nice Guy is a gateway drug to red pill, or if red pill's a no more is a gateway drug to No More Mr. Nice Guy." To me, let's just work together. Let's help men find answers to live their best lives, be their best selves, and to love themselves, and to love women fully, or if they love men, to love men fully. Let's just help men.
A lot of women that I've spoken to in my life that are single and are trying to find a man, you constantly hear them say, "There's just no good men out there. There's the pool is really dry. There's just no good men." And one of the things I've actually said to them is, other than where they're looking and so the type of guys that they're looking at, because I think they're definitely attracted towards the bad boys rather than sort of good men. But as I sort of thought about, I don't, I see myself as, I think I'm a good guy. I think I'm a good guy and a good man, and not necessarily a nice guy all the time, but I think I'm a good man. And I think about some of the attributes as to why the relationships I've had with women have never really ended badly, and I've treated women well. And I think all of those relationships have ended on some form of positive note, has been down to the fact that a lot of my good friends growing up, I had made friends with women, and I almost sort of inadvertently surveyed them throughout my life as to, like, what should a man be doing in order to be seen as a good guy, seen as a good man? What are the red flags that you're seeing? What are the green flags you go for? And try not hit all the time, not be 100% accurate, but aim for some of those things. And it seems to have worked. But I do also believe that men have to lift each other up. So there has to be that kind of blend of kind of understanding what women are asking for and really listening to it, but also being men to make it kind of safe enough to not fall into these toxic traits that are being presented to us in these very, very fringe cases.
Yeah, and women, especially if they're out there in the single dating world, when all the pickup stuff went around, the game and all that stuff, women got tired of hearing, those poll questions, "Oh, who lies more, men or women?" Or, "Oh, did you see the midgets fighting outside?" Women go, "Okay, I've heard that one." And I think the same thing with red pill. I think for a long time, women didn't know what red pill was, and maybe a lot still don't. But I think they started just kinda hearing that noise that came out of it, the men spinning plates, and the men, not gonna let a woman get too close, and, and the whole body count thing that just gets me going. Um, and so, women, they may not know how to identify what that stuff is, but, they bump into enough men that they're gonna keep seeing the same thing in the men. And, I I I came across a short YouTube video a few months ago, and I can't remember how somehow YouTube put it in front of me, and it was from a young woman, and she says, "I'm young, I'm sexually inexperienced, I want to have sexual experiences, I want to grow, I want to, experience different men and experience different feelings," and she said, "But I can't seem to get a man that just is wanting to show up and just let's just be honest. Let's just have an experience with each other." She said, "It's like they're all playing these games. They're all, thinking they're having to run this game and run this and do this and keep you at a distance while still trying to seduce you." And she goes, I just really want to practice getting laid. Are there any guys out there that'll just come along and just have fun and have sex and no commitment, no promise, no like, so we men, especially if we don't know how to attract women, again, I didn't for much of my life. And if we don't know what women want or what turns them on, and we just read all of this internet information, it just becomes just this, I call it geeks with techniques. We're just out there trying all these things we read or we saw online or watched on YouTube or this coach said that, and we're not being real. We're not being ourselves. And so we don't fit that category being comfortable in our own skin. And so, and the women just, they've heard it, they've seen it, they're tired of it. And again, I think a lot of the dating situation out there is probably as much to blame with women as it is with men. I'm not coming from a kind of red pill blaming all the, hypergamous women. But I think with technology, it is so easy. Like I said, you went to a foreign country and got on, a dating app, and all my buddies, when they come down here, they do the same thing. They get on Tinder, they get on Hinge, they get on all this, start looking for, local women, and they have no problems getting dates down here. But what's happened is that I think both men and women have their own form of FOMO, fear of missing out. Guys, rather than, they meet a woman, hey, I kind of like her. I want to, you think you want to get to know her better, maybe have a girlfriend, maybe, or see where it goes. But they go, well, if I just pick that one woman, oh, what if I see somebody cuter, younger, hotter over there, and now I can't go for her because I got this woman. So we don't want to get all in. So because we might want to go chase someone one over there, even if we wouldn't ever actually go talk to that woman, we think we might could, but if we're in a relationship, we can't. Now, the women, I think their FOMO is that, well, if I just get in with one guy and just get to know him and see where it takes us and use it as a, I call it powerful personal growth machine of relationship, well, I'm going to have to give up all that attention that men keep giving me. I'm getting messages 24/7. I get 100 messages a day. I get all kinds of men wanting to ask me out, wanting to buy me stuff, wanting to take me places. If I pick one guy, I got to get, I'll miss out on all that over there. So I actually think the whole hookup culture and the technology has created a great FOMO that now statistically fewer and fewer people are in a relationship, especially under 35, and fewer people are having sex, especially the age bracket of people 18 to early 20s. They should be having a lot of sex. We have all the technology and opportunity in the world, and now all of a sudden, hardly anybody's getting laid and nobody has a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Okay, I think that's problematic, but I think a lot of that is the technology just allows us to just bounce from one thing to the next, and nobody, wants to miss out on anything by trying to get maybe all the way in with one person to see where that might take us. So anyway, I don't know where I'm going with all that other than it seems to be part of the cultural dynamic that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think that the common issue that you do hear around that dating scene is that they might get a date, but then there's no depth, and it might only go to 1, 2, 3 dates maybe, and then maybe, like, ghosting will happen or whatever might happen along the way. But I I think this trying to understand, and what I always am trying to hope to guide people towards is, I know when you said about being a nice guy is someone who internalizes not being okay
Yeah.
with themselves,
I'm not
essentially.
okay just as I am. I gotta become what I think other people want me to be, and I gotta hide anything about me that might get a negative reaction.
Yeah, and so trying to become a man, how do you differentiate between kinda not being a nice guy and being a good man?
Well, that's a good question, and I think the easiest answer to that is how I tend to view nice guys is it is shame and anxiety driven. Shame, I'm not good enough as I am, I'm not lovable, I've gotta become lovable so people will love me. I mentioned, I think before we started recording, I just wrote a blog article last week, a newsletter article, about how perfectionism keeps you from getting the love you want. And so I made reference to, a guy that I'm working with who's very accomplished, great career, has money, good looking, great shape, and, and he just focused on that he can't all the girls he tries to talk to, basically give him a cold shoulder or reject him. And I I was talking with him, I said, "Well, if your belief is you're only good enough if you're perfect, you are going to find people in your world to reinforce you're not being good enough. And you'll create paradigms and situations that you now define that way. So when you talk to, these young women you're attracted to and they don't give you the time of day, you're going to interpret that as you're not good enough and they see that. Right. And he's also invested in a lot of this internet information. Well, you got to be a high value man and women are naturally attracted to these things in a man. And I go, yeah, And there's a lot of women that are attracted to men that don't have any of those things. Just look around, you know. And he goes, "I know." He said, I've got I've got friends, in-laws where, attractive women are with guys that are shorter than me, and they're not even attractive, and they're not that smart." And I go, "See, that's my point." Of trying to apply all this evolutionary psychology and pin that on every woman doesn't work, but it ties into that you're not good enough. And so you are going to actually create scenarios in life that reinforce your belief that you're not good enough. And that's what perfectionism is. It's a belief I'm not good enough, so I have to do everything perfect. And so, again, I think there's this thing of whether it's in therapy, a 12-step group, a support group, a best friend, let's start revealing those insecurities we have about ourselves where we think we're not good enough and start getting feedback and go, no, actually, you're fine. You're good enough. You're all right. Yeah, you can work on that if you want to, but it won't make you a better person. So to me, the thing that distinguishes a good man from the nice guy maybe with capital N, capital G, or simp as the younger people call him, is that the nice guy is driven by shame. I'm not good enough. I gotta get people to like me. And if they find out who I am, they're gonna leave me. It's also driven by anxiety to where so many men I work with can't even talk to a woman they're attracted to because their anxiety just paralyzes them. Or their anxiety is somebody might be upset with them or somebody might be mad at them. And I still deal with this. My wife will get a look on her face and my nervous system is, I'm gonna die. I have to fix this right now. Well, even though my wife can kick my ass, she can out squat me. She's a gym rat. She's been, a gym rat since she was 15. I'm not gonna die because she's mad at me. She's not gonna leave me. She has my initials tattooed on her front hips. She loves me. She loves the life I give her. And she's not gonna leave me, and I'm not gonna die. She's not gonna kill me. But in my nervous system, right, she gets a look on her face, and it just triggers a deep anxiety. Well, I've been working on that in therapy, still doing the work on it today. And now I can watch it and kind of smile at it and go, I'm not gonna die, but that sure doesn't make me anxious. So the nice guy is trying to manage that anxiety, trying to fix that, get her back to good, make her happy, make sure he didn't do anything wrong. And that's not what good guys do. Good guys aren't trying to fix anybody, aren't trying to manage situations, aren't trying to impress anybody, aren't trying to hide anything from anybody. Good guys are just being themselves, just being uh, a decent human being. I'm on book 3 now of the series of Red Rising. I know it's a pretty popular series with young men, and I was reading it while out camping, and there's one line in there where, the sensei, I can't think of his name now, was teaching the young guy, Darrow. He says, "If I was trying to make you a great man," he said, "I would ruin you, but I wanna make you a decent man." And I highlighted that, and I really like the idea of being a decent man. So, kinda like your thought experiment, I started asking myself, "What does that mean to be a decent man?" And I can look at my life and see some ways I wasn't decent, right? I didn't treat people well. I had secrets, or I broke commitments, or I didn't follow through, or I said one thing but did another. And I thought, "That's not decent." And so that's a whole lot different than going, "Well, how do I get people to like me? How do I make sure nobody ever leaves me or nobody ever accuses me of anything?" The better question is, how do I be a decent man? And, the quickest, easiest answer was be authentic and keep my commitments. So I think that's a good starting point. There's a good man. He's authentic. He lets people see who he is. He keeps his commitments. His word is what he says is true. I think that's a good man.
I think the part you mentioned about maybe some of this being placed at the feet of women as to them maybe saying and there being more conversation around what makes a good man in the world right now, I think has shifted men away from actually like an authentic version of what being a good man for themselves actually is. Because there are some definite truths in what would be making a good man and how it feels. And this comes sort of full circle as to why I've found Latin or Latina culture and having women that are Latina and relationships with them almost is far more attractive to me because there are these traditional gender roles that exist within that dynamic. I know my girlfriend puts this so simply, but she's like, I dated you and I'm with you because you're tall, you're good looking, you make me laugh, you can take the bins out, you can take the trash out. And just the taking the trash out is her version of saying, "You're gonna do masculine things." Right? It's her version of saying, "You're gonna do the masculine roles that I want you to do." And it was something that I thought, "Do you know what? Like, that weirdly it empowers me. It makes me feel good. Like, you kinda want me for that, and you kinda want me for something that I know I can do, but you are handing that role over to me." And I think where some of the language with the feminism movement has tried to level the playing field, that in an equal relationship, I don't believe it has to be equal tasks
That
in what you
everything's
do.
exactly 50-50. You
No, like,
wash the
you can
dishes half the time,
100%.
you get up at night with the kids half the time, you mow the lawn. Oh, no, that doesn't usually go 50-50. But, you know, I often joke that when women go through divorce, their math skills go to hell because 50-50 takes on weird proportions. When they do studies of who does the most work in the home, between men and women, it's all on self-report, and I think women's math skills kinda go to hell in that situation as well. Um, but here's the deal. I didn't go looking, for example, for a traditional woman that let me play a traditional masculine role. I'm actually very feminine in many ways. I like to be loved, I like to be appreciated, I like to snuggle, I'm also masculine in that I like to put a dent in the universe. I like making a difference. Um I like, living with purpose. And so I didn't go looking for that. And I know, I was actually just reading, somebody sent me an Instagram, thing yesterday. And again, I have an Instagram channel, but I never look at it. But so I looked at it, and this guy was talking about why he married a younger woman. And just, and then I started reading the comments all the women made below. "Well, he's a schmuck, he's a scum, wait till she like develops, some, her own life, and then he'll find out you got to go younger again." Blah 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 blah. The women are all just reacting. The same thing could happen to saying, "Well, yeah, you're attracted to Latina women," and all the other women go, "You're a scum. You just want a woman you can dominate." But I tell you what, I don't know about your girlfriend, but you ask any I've done this thought experiments. I'll ask people, "Who's stronger, Lupita or I?" You can ask her kids, ask friends. Oh, they'll all go, "Oh, Lupita." She'll kick your ass. Again, she grew up in poverty. She's got street smart. She's strong. She dropped out of high school at 15 to go to work because she wore flip-flops to school every day and was always embarrassed she couldn't afford shoes. And so she dropped out of high school at 15. I got a PhD at 29, and I think she got a higher IQ than I do. Again, I know she can squat more than I do. And she is funny, she's smart, she's sharp, she's extrovert. Again, her mantra is, "If I want to, I can do it. Yo quiero, yo puedo." And you know what? None of that has to do with traditional, gender roles. It has to do with I'm with a very strong woman who's been through a lot and who loves that I treat her like gold, and that, I think the world of her. She loves that, I don't even know if Lupita knows exactly what I do. I tell her, "I've got an interview today." I don't think she knows, one time, I was working out in the gym and, I was watching like, Alex Hormozy interview somebody else who'd interview I mean, watching Chris Williamson interview somebody else who'd interviewed me. And I go, "Look, I've been interviewed by both those guys." And she kinda looks at it and goes, "Okay." Yeah. She wasn't at all impressed, right? She wasn't the slightest bit impressed. And, one time she heard me speak, up in Vancouver, British Columbia a few years ago, about 8 years ago, I guess. And I was speaking to a mixed group of men and women, and, it's all in English, so she didn't understand probably much of it. But I got done after speaking for an hour plus and went and sat down next to her, and she had tears running down her face. She goes, "I don't know what you said, but you had all of those people in your hands. You were holding them." And said, "They were riveted to you." She says, "You're a big man." And she says, "I know I need to be a big woman to match you." And, I got tears hearing that. So she loves knowing I make a difference in the world. She loves when men come to my office and do workshops with me here in the house, and they go tell her how I've changed their life. So again, I don't think she even knows exactly what I do. I mean, she has read my book in Spanish. So, but that's not why she loves me. She just loves my presence. of how people do respect me and how we are together. We'll walk into a restaurant, always get it's the same routine. It's almost a comedy routine. The waiters will ask her, "Should we give him a menu in English?" And she goes, "No, he's in Mexico. He can order in Spanish." So like, yeah, traditional roles. Yeah, she's and then they hand her a menu, and she goes, "No, he's my boss, he'll order for me." And then I joke in Spanish, "Yeah, I get to be the boss when she says I can." And the waiters all laugh at that one. So, here's a woman who can get shit done, who doesn't need me to get shit done, but who loves me. And she'll tell me things like, "Let me give to you. Let me do things for you. I'll be sitting at the kitchen table, and, I'll need a fork, so I'll get it from the table to go get a fork." And she go, "Where are you going?" And I go, I need a fork." And she goes, "I'll get it for you." And I'll go, "I can get it." Because for me, if I let her go get it, then I'm like my dad. "Mrs. Glover, get me a fork." And I've been trying to be not like my dad all my life, right? But she tells me, "You do everything for me. Let me do things for you. Let me love you." So even like the garbage thing, I'll go to take the garbage out and she'll say, "You need help?" Oh, my aunt, "No, I don't need help. I can take the garbage." I go, "Yeah, come, come with me." So basically, that's, I love the way that she shows her love to me by just doing the little things, giving me a pedicure, trimming, my eyebrows, ironing my clothes for me. Not because those are traditional male-female roles. I just love the way that she wants me to feel her love because she feels my love. So to me, that's not so much, as a traditional models, but we joke about we have this competition to see who can outlove the other, who can outgift the other, not just in giving stuff, but just loving the other deeply. And I always tell her, "You win because you're a more loving person than me." And so that's what I would encourage people to look for, whether you go get that in a different culture from the one you grew up in, but find somebody who wants to be in a reciprocal relationship with a loving competition to see who can outlove the other. That's when stuff is fun and interesting, not because somebody plays this role or plays that role or, is dominant or submissive. Now, my wife does like the polarity, and I think Latina women often like the polarity, but again, the women in Latina culture are stronger than the men. The macho is just another word for mommy's boy. I mean, they were raised by their mommies to be special, their sisters made their bed for them, so they just grew up, needing the approval of women. The women do all the work. And so, yeah, don't let anybody accuse you that you picked a Latina woman because you wanted a submissive, passive woman. I haven't found that woman down here. They're strong.
Yeah, they definitely are, and I think it's much more simple in terms of how things are, like, with the way you even explain that, it's just like loving each other equally. It's a very simplistic way of looking at it, and I think too many people potentially are complicating that whole dynamic and the relationship dynamic, the world we live in. Where do you see this all going in the future? Where do you see potentially, whether it's men, women, the relationship sphere that we're talking about? Because it's a big topic right now in the world, and people are trying to navigate it as best as they possibly can. But you said that
Yeah.
pendulum is swinging, but where do you see it going?
I think a lot of them are swinging, but, how much time it takes, I don't know. Yeah, I guess one last piece that I see, I don't know if this is answering your question or not. Um, there's definite patterns statistically of people not getting into relationship and statistical patterns of not having much sex and statistical patterns of either not having children or waiting much older to have them. And I can understand that if I was 35, 25 even, looking at the world we live in and thinking, I don't know if I want to bring children into this world. It's pretty uncertain. But I think that's been true for centuries that people look around and go, things are pretty uncertain out there. Things are changing fast. And they have been for a long time. And so uh, fewer and fewer people are getting married, making long-term commitment to relationship. And I'm not passing any kind of judgment of what's good or what's bad in this whole area. I think everybody's got to figure out what works for them. But one thing I do see, I'll just put it this way, that the things that have grown me the most in my life, the most, without exception, has been being married and raising kids. Those two things have grown me, matured me, showed me the world more than anything else I've ever done, more than therapy, more than anything. And it does concern me that we're going in a direction of, as I said, more and more people not getting into relationships that last more than a week or two or a few weeks because we got to bounce to the next one. Um, Both men and women being afraid of going deep and being real and revealing themselves and really welcoming someone else to reveal themselves as you get to know each other better and going through struggles. And I'm not advocating that I think marriage is somehow superior in any way, but there is something about being married that I think ups the commitment level that you don't just walk away from it quite as easily. And, I've been divorced twice, so I have walked away from two. Um, but not after at least a minimum of 10 years of trying to see, could this work? And can I, and they've grown me. Raising kids, I've got, my 40-year-old son, raised two stepkids in my second marriage, two stepkids now with my wife, Lupita. And that's just, that's just grown me. I wouldn't change a thing in terms of having been married and raising kids. And so I think I am concerned about the trend of people shying away from longer term commitment in a relationship and shying away from having kids. I know Elon Musk is all upset about that because he wants more consumers out there in the world. Um, but I also think that that could create and perpetuate kind of a lifelong Peter Pan view of the world where people don't ever go do the hard things. Um, So again, no judgment in any of that. It's just more of an observation that I think if you really want to grow and get challenged, um, nothing like a marriage and kids to do it. And again, I think, a lot of young generation, well, we want to be digital nomads. We want to travel the world with just our backpack and our laptop. We don't want to be tied down. We want to be able to do whatever we want to do today. And I mean, that's fine. Do that while you're young. Um, but at some point, I think that there has to be a process of growing up and becoming mature adults that actually offer something to the world rather than just being digital nomads and, living in whatever the next cool country is and dating the next hot person. So again, I may sound judgmental about that, but I'm really just saying, um, I'm not, and I never push anybody to get married that doesn't want to be or push anybody to have kids that doesn't want them. But I do think there is value in those institutions.
Robert, I appreciate your time. Where's the best place for people to go to follow what you're doing, keep up to date with your work?
I'm down in Puerto Vallarta. Come on down. Yeah, that's where you find me. Drglover.com is my website that has my courses, my workshops, lots of free stuff on there as well. And then my men's program is Integration Nation at integrationnation.net. And yeah, check either of those out and, drop me a line.
Thank you so much for doing this, not only for coming on the show, but for being someone that's actually had an impact in my life, even just through the words that you said and for the work that you're doing. It's amazing. So thank you so much.
Louis, thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. Keep it up.
If you enjoyed that episode, Robert, and you want to enjoy even more episodes of the show, then all you have to do is click right here. I've got a playlist of all the best places for you to get started. Go on.